meeting in like 4 years, I believe.
It's been a while, yes, sir. Yes, and because it has been a while, we do have quite a few policies on the agenda. The good news is that there's not a whole lot of massive changes. Most of them, I don't know if you got a chance to read through them yet or not, but most of the changes are simple language changes to be in compliance with the law, or they added citations to the end, case law that we could reference for the need for the policy. So if you want to go through them each one by one real quick.
Well, did anybody have any specific issues with any of the changes? Like the ones I looked over, I didn't get to all of them, but they were very minor. Like it was.
Yes, the most of them are either just changing the Office of Safe Schools to the School and Safe, or to the PCCD. Instead of the Safe Schools Report, they changed it to School Safety and Security Incident Reports. They changed local police department to law enforcement agency holding jurisdiction in the school district. The biggest one is the reporting one. I believe this is a major change in policy 218.2. Is that? Yeah, the second one on your agenda.
That's the only one I really wanted to talk about. Yeah,
Right,
so.
let's set that one aside then. Then the other one is policy 805. There are quite a few changes on that one. If see 805.1, again, they changed the language to from the Safe Schools Act to the provisions of school code regarding safety. They talk about forming an advisory committee. We already have one of those, which is great. So we're ahead of the curve there. They talk about the need for us to have MOUs with all of our law enforcement agencies having jurisdiction in our district every 2 years. We're already doing that with and that includes state police and Indiana Borough Police now, because they both do have jurisdiction, like if depending on the situation. So, and that's for all of our, or for even the schools in White Township now. There's also a process in place for the reporting that they want us to work with the police agencies ahead of time to match our reporting with their reporting. We already do that. Every time we have a safety core team meeting, Lieutenant Slavinsky brings an incident report, how many times they were called to the school, whether or not charges were filed, those kinds of things. Every time there's an incident on our end, we have to report it in PIMS, which is the Pennsylvania Information Management System. That's handled by Wes Matthews, and he's the data guy in the back. We call him the wizard. So when at the end of the year, he prints out a giant report, sends it to the state police and to Chief Shaw, who go through it with a fine-tooth comb. They call me and work through questions like, hey, we got this terroristic threat at Ben Franklin, but we weren't involved in that. What is that about? And it's like, a kindergartner said, I'm going to kill you or something, but we didn't feel it rose to the need to call the police. We work through those incidents to make sure that they're okay with it. If there's any discrepancy, he notifies the state in writing. But all of those things that are changes, we're already ahead of the curve on all those things. So that's really the most important one. And then everything else in those other policies is simply wording, verbiage. If we go back to 218, thing that was added there is the case with a student. This is about terroristic threats. Very similar to what I just described happened at kindergarten. Sometimes what happened with students who have impulse control issues, etc. So in the case of the student with a disability, including a student for whom an evaluation is pending, which means we think that Tara might have a special need. We're looking into that. The school psychologist is working on that evaluation. There's an incident that happens at that point. We still have to treat Tara as if she is a student with special needs, even during that process. We shall take all the steps required to comply with state and federal laws and regulations and procedures set forth in the memorandum of understanding with law enforcement and board policies. So that the way we interpret that is simply we have to follow the law, which we're very hyper aware of. And when students with disabilities are involved, there's a different set of laws that are also in play here. And that's the way we interpret it, but I open up the discussion.
Well, yeah, I just wanted to bring this up for discussion because it was point of contention repeatedly the last several years,
Fair point.
both in not Ben Franklin, Horseman. There was an incident,
Correct.
more recently. In the case of an IEP or standing mental health suspicion, I guess, it causes a lot of angst to parents because it seems like there's a shield that's keeping their kid who's the victim from being safe. And that's the perception out there. And it's, I kind of just wanted to bring that up because the policy as written doesn't sound bad. It just, in practice, I don't know what else we could do to make that any better at all.
I think the timeline is probably the issue too. So as soon as they initiate or request for their kid to be evaluated, it's a 60-day timeline.
Yeah.
And then there's a 10-day time frame where they can issue permission. So it turns into a 70-day ordeal. And I think
Yeah, and
It's a long
beyond that,
time.
and on top of that, it's difficult because the confidentiality laws
Mhm.
limit what we're allowed to communicate. So the parent hears the story that came home from the kid.
Right.
They have a conversation with a principal who's very veiled in what they say because they're not allowed to violate their confidentiality. So they're left to draw their own conclusions. And all they know is some kid threatened my kid and they're very upset about it. And it happens, occasionally, like you said. And it is a difficult situation. And all we can say in those situations, even before this was a policy, it's the law. So we have to follow that. We're aware of that. But it is a difficult situation, to your point. I mean, it does handcuff us a little bit because we would like to tell you exactly, well, that child has autism. They have an impulse control. They can't regulate what they're saying.
Right.
They didn't really mean it, or we don't think they really meant it when their child is crying because they were threatened. So it is a very difficult situation, and I don't know that there's a good answer for it.
I mean, there hasn't been a situation since I've been around, Justin could speak to this prior to me, that something happened and then somebody said, but I think he has a disability, or I think she has a disability.
Like after.
It's already
Yeah.
been, discussed and it's in evaluation. That makes sense?
Yeah, I think all the ones I'm aware of were well-known students that had repeated, issues, and that the public perception that was, kind of conveyed to me was nothing can be done because they're a protected class almost. That's not the right word I want to use, but you know what I mean? Like there's a shield there that keeps, like if it was anybody else, there would be discipline. There would be something that happened that would protect my kid from having to suffer that.
Sure.
There's no answer for it. I don't know what the answer is. I just,
And those are all situations where we have to work with our solicitor. But the law says, the only time that you can unilaterally move a student with a disability is if there's drugs, weapons, or serious bodily injury. So that kind of, in these situations where, things just continue, there's an issue after issue after issue, we have to work with parents. And if parents are not receptive to an outside placement, we can't unilaterally place them unless it's one of those three things. If it's one of those three things, then we can.
in that definition we've talked about before, the
Yeah.
serious bodily harm is nebulous.
Mhm.
And that's
Yes.
Yes.
the way that they define serious bodily injury is disfigurement. And I know that
A
this
broken
is,
finger didn't count, I think.
Yeah.
Right,
We had that.
broken-handed,
and this is, it's not an issue for us. That's an issue. That's the IDEA law,
Yeah.
which is, it's a national, everyone in the country's following that. But it does, I think we've been pretty successful in working with parents and when there is a need for an outside placement that's not one of those three things, we've been successful. Usually it doesn't happen overnight where a parent agrees to, hey, we're gonna, we agree that an outside placement is necessary. And, those are just those situations that are really difficult. We
Right.
often have to involve Ron Repack into the discussions.
Individualized for sure.
Yeah.
And to Justin's point, every one of those cases that we've had in the past, we were successful in eventually getting the child into the placement that they needed. It just takes time because Tara's point, the timeline is we have to have data. We can't just
Right.
make the decision. So, but this is now putting what we already have to follow into our policy. So I don't know if it's not something we're comfortable with now. We don't have to pass it.
I don't have a problem as written. I felt, it touched up all those memories, all those other issues. I
Absolutely.
wanted to have a short discussion on it. That's,
Yeah.
anybody else have anything?
So if there's no questions or further discussion about those policies, we will move all of them to the board for the reading tonight. So I think every single one of the other ones that we didn't discuss at length simply changed a few words about like the Office of Safe Schools to PCCD or,
Is there no Office of Safe Schools anymore? I wondered that as I was reading it. All of them said you would just send them to PDE.
the PDE is now the reporting, and the Office of Safe Schools is now gone, and all of that work goes through the Pennsylvania Commission on Crime and Delinquency. So, yep. So I think, I don't know if they absorbed them or if that's a completely different entity
Yeah,
in
that's
itself, but
The thing that caught me as I was reading that, thinking, what happened? I mean, I know they're downsizing a lot at
Yeah.
PDE, and I thought, geez, did they get rid of another whole
it could have been.
division?
Yeah, I have to find out for you. And that brings us to our discussion item, and that's political activity on school grounds. So we recently received several reports of a gentleman riding a horse, wearing a mask, waving.
The Lone Ranger.
The Lone Ranger waving a Trump flag, and
He's been out here for years.
yeah, he's been around for a
Yeah.
while. But so a few specifically more about the horse, I think, is where some people were upset. But a few parents and things felt a little uncomfortable about this person wearing a mask riding a horse at the football game specifically. And recently,
He was at the football
Yeah,
game.
he
I was
was
gonna
at
say,
the-
where did this happen?
he was at the first football
We don't know
game.
anything, I don't know anything about this.
Well, I didn't know anything about it at first.
I
either,
was
but
there.
We got some pictures. He wasn't there when I got there, so
Yeah,
if
I
he
was there.
didn't see him.
I saw him. And so the student section was like, what in the world? You know, everyone focused their attention to the right.
Well, how did he come into
No, he
the?
wasn't in.
No, he was out on the grounds, like outside the fence, but on school grounds.
Uh-huh.
And, he's not, from what I understand, he didn't do anything threatening other than brought a large animal near people.
But he has a
And
mask.
he has a mask.
That's threatening.
And that's what people said. People said, at some points when he puts the mask on, they don't know. Then he rode through Ben Franklin, through the bus loop there. And
On the horse.
on the horse, and the security guard thought that he may have had a sidearm on him. So he tried to interact. The guy did not respond and rode through. Another witness said they didn't see a firearm, but, they weren't sure. So had he had a firearm, that's a clear violation of the law, right? However, just having the animal on, we don't have a policy that strictly prohibits animals on property, but we have other policies that allow certain animals on property, which kind of implies that other animals are not allowed on property. So we talked about that. However, after a lot of discussion and Chief Shaw was great on this, we talked to him about it. He was very helpful. Without a solid policy, I just let it go, because as long as he was away from the people and not threatening anyone, if he's a threat, if he causes a disruption, then I have the power to have him removed. If he threatens people or brings the animal close to the people, I could have him removed for that. Just, waving a Trump flag and sitting on a horse on a hillside, there's nothing wrong with that, and he can do it all he wants. That juxtaposed with some recent situations we had in schools that we talked about in the letter I sent, where we're very careful, especially with this election, where, we are Switzerland, right? We are right down the middle. We do not teach kids one thing or the other. And as this election heats up over the next couple months, I thought it might be at least worth a discussion. Do we want to pass a policy like many school districts have about political activism on school grounds? For this particular case in point, we would have been able to say, listen, without, you need to move across the street because you're not allowed to have political activities on school grounds. If someone comes and changes themselves to a tree and says, we need to change environmental laws, we could have them removed, because of policy. I have many, when I was looking through our policies, I went through looking through laws that might apply to, and I found many, many policies in many different districts about specifically prohibiting political activity on school grounds. However, it does kind of bleed into what about if the students want to have stand up for something,
Right.
have a demonstration. We have policy that allows that under certain circumstances. We have policy that strictly prohibits employees from doing that. Had that been, if we took that mask off and found out he was one of our teachers, he'd probably be fired, but there's nothing about the public. So I just want to bring it up to you all. If you want me to, I can go seek some out.
I have a question. The Ben Franklin incident, was it during a school time?
During school day when the security guard was on duty, yes, and he tried to stop him and the gentleman didn't respond.
Now, where did he go on Ben Franklin? On the school property?
Yeah, he went up
And then-
through the bus loop. So
Oh, he went out through that bus loop?
up through the
Okay, I
bus loop, and the
misunderstood
security
that.
guard said that he tried to get his attention and he didn't
So
respond to
he
him.
was on the pavement, he wasn't
on the
grass.
pavement, rode up through the thing,
Are you
And
even allowed to ride horses in town?
Yeah, you're allowed
Yeah.
to.
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Yep, on the roads,
Well,
not on
that's
the
why I was asking,
sidewalks.
it's-
Because he went
even though he
right,
used our right of way, he wasn't like on the grass by the football field. It's different because now he's on
that's
the lawn.
right.
That's not a right of way. That's
Right.
Correct.
he's on a mode of transportation, and that could be it's a legal mode of transportation,
Bless you.
archaic but legal, and
Correct.
you
And I
need
didn't,
to. But if it like just say a random car pulled through the loop of Ben Franklin during the school day and didn't stop or stopped briefly and went, would that raise suspicion? Would we report that? Not
Well,
really.
we might if they have masks on.
Granted.
Seriously.
That's a different layer, but I'm just, as
Yeah.
far as the mode of transportation, like that one, I have a lot less problem with, going to the football game and outside the fence, and that's more of a demonstration. It's more of a,
correct.
I don't know what his purpose would be to
This
go
guy
through
is
the.
very clever. He's been around for years. He's always on Philly Street.
What's his name?
Oh, I don't know. It's a mystery.
I've
guy.
never seen him.
He's a mystery.
Well, he
He might
actually
be
rode
somebody
down,
we know in town.
I heard he rode right down through the festival, the NAP,
Mhm.
Oh, yeah.
right down through the Philadelphia Street during that festival.
Where he keeps his horse.
That's where he's mostly at on Philly Street.
Yeah.
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 I've never seen him, but I've seen
Is-
pictures of him. People put
I
pictures
see
of him
him
on Facebook.
often.
He's
Quintina, there was
Real-
a guy that was kind of walking into businesses here 4 or 5 years ago.
Mhm.
It's not the same guy then?
Oh, I have no idea. who
She
this-
doesn't
No
know
one
who he is.
knows
He has
who
a
this
mask
guy
on.
is.
You know,
Tom,
though, it's really interesting because some cities have outlawed masks of any type because of the robberies. And I just find that is a threatening thing to have that mask on. I just think if he's not, is he a chicken? Why does he take his?
No one knows who he
mask on?
is. He doesn't speak. He just.
Did you talk to the police about it at all?
We did talk to the police and we talked about different approaches and we kind of agreed with if he stays at a distance and doesn't bring the animal near people or isn't interacting with people with the mask on, if he's just over on the side, we're gonna let him go because I don't want to start a political incident. Oh, here's the school district is stomping on my First Amendment rights,
Yeah,
because, now I hate Trump or something because I want to move him off the
Right,
property. But
right.
at the same time, if he would bring the animal nearby, we would definitely be within our rights to say, listen. So that's what we talked about as a team. We talked to the security guards and said, look, obviously, if you see a weapon, you get the police involved instantly. If he brings animals anywhere near the stadium where the people are gathering, ask him to go across the street. But he didn't show up at the last football game. So, and he might just be a good example of any number of things that could happen. We could have people from, the left come and, take action too. I just want to make sure without a policy, it's difficult for us to enforce
Well, I
anything.
But I think the policy is going to be sticky because if parents come to volleyball games, basketball games, football games with political shirts on, we can't stop them from doing that.
Agreed. And I
Parents.
would,
So
I
how
think-
would we
well,
draw the line?
Like Rob said, demonstrations like chaining yourself to a tree or
Writing a
handing out pamphlets or any kind of like political activity. Like if you're wearing a shirt, or you got a bumper sticker, or you got a flag on your car,
no problem there.
you're allowed to be in any public space in town. If you come to pick up your kid and you got a flag in your truck, whatever. But if you have a political activity, trying to get out the vote or one issue or another, that I think would at the very least requires school permission to be done on school grounds.
Right.
Like you said, the kids, if
True.
they want to do it, there's a process. They can do that.
True.
It shouldn't be any different, so that should not be allowed. So this guy on the horse with the Trump sign, if he starts handing out stuff, that's a problem for me, because now he's an activist. Like,
Right.
it's not just a decal or a flag that he's carrying.
Yeah, he's scary looking. I mean, little kids
I
would be
need to look
afraid.
this guy. I've never seen it, but
I'm sorry.
for me, I think that's where the line should be drawn.
Okay,
you
so
know?
I like this idea that both of you have. So permission. Because
Yeah,
our
just ask
If
students
you're
have,
gonna do that's almost like a campaign activity. You're doing
Right.
something.
yeah,
If you're just wearing a shirt, if you got a bumper sticker, you got a flag,
right.
you can go anywhere else in town with that. I don't see a problem with it. Now, I liked your video, like examples of derogatory statements or images of weapons and that kind of stuff. You know,
Correct.
the Second Amendment shirts, a lot of them have that. I get that. That's not appropriate for school. So
Right.
I think
But parents would still
a
be
stated
wearing
limit
those
on that. But yeah, a parent who comes to a basketball game who's got a Second Amendment shirt on,
Nothing you can do.
nothing really you can do. Yeah.
Yeah, and I have no
But
interest.
if they brought a flag or a banner and did a demonstration, that's
That's a different
Right.
thing. That's
that would
Exactly.
be something we would discourage.
because that goes along, like he said, a disturbance. You're trying to draw attention to yourself. You're just wearing a shirt because you like the shirt. What's the problem with that?
Sure.
Yeah, so maybe you need to clearly define what's prohibited
Right.
Yes,
and send that out, or,
without permission too.
yeah.
Well, but that also needs to be extended to signage. We discussed this too. In the past, on weapons on the school grounds, we don't actually have a sign that says you can't bring it, state law forbids. We also could say the same thing about animals. I think it's crazy for somebody to bring a dog to a football game, but we don't have anything to say, don't do that yet. So, and that's not, we don't have any of those restrictions posted in any of our buildings. So it's difficult to get somebody for violating those or trespassing. The DA was saying that on weapons, we can only get them for trespassing if we post it. Okay, we can't prevent somebody from coming with weapons,
Mhm.
but if we had it posted, then we can arrest them for trespassing because they're violating that sign.
Mhm.
And I know that most certainly the YMCA, but also the Optimist restrict animals and smoking and drugs and those kind of things on the grounds.
And smoking and drugs, we already have policy. that
Right.
So
says
we
you're
have
not-
policies, but we
Right.
don't have signage.
Yeah.
Now, with the, we have the students are able to register to vote, and we have I think the League of Women Voters come in and do that, but they have permission to come in and do that.
Correct.
And that's a political thing in a way, voting,
Correct. And
but,
now,
that's a
not-
difference.
But
You're not
That's
officially
a
pushing one
difference.
candidate or another.
Yeah.
You just
Right.
register to vote.
Right.
To make your voice heard. That
as
kind of
long
True,
as they
thing.
stay
true.
nonpartisan.
Yeah, but I'm just thinking about, how we're gonna draw the line.
That's more of a civics thing. So.
True, civic, okay, yeah.
And what I
And
can
also, he
do-
doesn't clean up after his horse either, I can tell you
Yeah,
that too.
oh, yeah,
Oh.
there's
Oh, no.
all on Philly Street, someone was mad this weekend.
It's, yeah,
Yeah,
it's
that's
true.
fine. That's
So
fine.
one of our maintenance would have to.
I didn't get a report about any maintenance having occurred.
Well, I heard about it on Philadelphia Street. Store owners were not real happy about that.
I've been, Yeah, and
The state police don't clean up after their horses either, right?
No, I did not know that, but, Tom,
I'm just pointing that out.
no, that's a good
Or
point,
homecoming.
because there's no rule against it. He can ride right down the street.
Sure. And currently, he can ride right on our property and say what he wants and wave what he wants and
Yeah, but we don't
wear what he
want
wants.
that,
So,
right?
So
We want to do
So-
we want to do something
So
definitely.
when you were looking at those policies that other places had, Ron, I know, that some other government, mostly at the federal level, have like a designated area. And then whatever protests, whatever demonstrations you want has to be confined to that particular area. Did any of the ones you looked at have anything like that in there?
the ones I looked at that I spent a lot of time reading, most of were about asking permission. Like you have to, present your plan in writing ahead of time. And if you don't have express written permission,
I
you're
love
not
it.
allowed to do it. And it might just be that simple where, hey, you got to send me a letter, tell me where you're going to be,
That's
what you're
all.
going to be doing. Just like the kids have to do. If the
That's
kids,
great.
we've had students that have, hey, support this candidate or that
Right.
candidate, as long as they ask for permission and go through the right channels.
Right, Exactly. I
they
think
can
that's-
do those things, or if, they wanna, the one time they wanted to walk out of class and have a moment of silence, we let them do that as long as
Right.
they follow the right protocol. So,
Right.
it's,
But it
We're all
helps
for it.
prepare organizationally too. If you want to protest in the borough, you have to do the same process.
Correct.
Because if it's a contentious issue, they need to beef up police, or whatever, they have time to actually prepare. We would have time to prepare if we know something's going to be an issue, whether you approve it or deny it, at least you have a heads up so it's not chaos.
The
correct.
borough has a-
I like the
borough
idea
has
of
an
a
ordinance in
policy.
place that you can't have more than 3 people gathering without a permit.
Or it's a mob, right? 4 is a mob.
Or the mob. They adopted that in the late 60s.
Yeah,
The most upsetting thing to me is just that mask, because,
agreed.
and I don't care
You mean the
who
voice
hears
doesn't
this, this
bother
is Sally McCombie talking, just if you don't have the guts to show who you are, then just stay away from me.
Wait till the horse kicks you, you might be more concerned about the other end.
Well, that's true too.
It is, and that's for
That's
sure. And I
another
think both
point.
policies probably need to be, like, animals on property, I think probably needs to be beefed up a little bit, because like I said, the service animal policy implies that no animals are allowed. And I know that state law prohibits certain animals from being on the premises, but we don't have a policy that says all animals are strictly prohibited. All we'd have to do is maybe add something to the service animal policy that says, all other animals are strictly prohibited without express written consent.
The way that
Yeah,
it
but
says
I'd
it,
like to take that a step
We
further.
need to do, a step
and-
further.
And get it posted,
Well,
so that's
okay.
enforceable. Okay, this guy on the horse isn't gonna read our policies, but he might see the sign saying no animals allowed.
Mhm.
the
But
way that
still,
it says it in the policy right now is the board shall permit individuals with disabilities to use service animals in district buildings, on district property, and on vehicles that are owned, leased, or controlled by the school district, in accordance with this policy in applicable state. And then above that, it says the provision of emotional support, well-being, comfort, or companionship does not constitute work or tasks for the
Right.
purpose of this definition. So
Yeah.
it's still vague, but it's.
yeah, we can
So it
stretch it,
excludes,
but it's
it
more
excludes
than
somebody that
just
says,
the
I want my
animal
dog
for me.
because
This is my emotional
Because it's
support.
my
Companion.
my companion, I want my dog in the classroom.
Yeah.
It excludes that.
Correct.
Yeah, but it doesn't, but
You'd
it
have
doesn't
every
let me
kid
know
bring
I
in
can't
their
bring my
dog.
German Shepherd to the football game.
It's on
It
school
does- it
property.
does.
It's not claiming for the
It-
horse
Yeah,
space.
it doesn't
It
say
doesn't.
that. It doesn't say that. I can bring my horse to a football game.
Right.
Correct.
If I had a horse.
It-
If I had a horse.
It
But
wasn't.
are we upset about the horse or the whole idea of what he's doing? I'm upset about the idea of what he's doing.
Yeah. if
I'm
he's
upset
trying
at the
to-
potential, like, as presented, it's not so bothersome because of what happened, but the potential, a large animal around a crowd of people.
Okay,
Or
I
a
guess I'll
vicious
settle for that.
Or a vicious
And
animal.
who,
Well, it's the potential, okay, somebody brings a German Shepherd or, the horse gets spooked and does kick
Yeah.
somebody, that potential is not only a
That's-
liability, it's a
okay.
safety thing.
True.
That's the most bothersome for me.
Yeah,
The politics level adds a layer to it, but to me, that's a secondary thing. It
Okay.
really is. He's
all
not,
right.
he's got a sign.
But
A lot
I
of
agree
people
that the
have signs.
mask is an
Okay.
issue.
Yeah.
The mask is an
Yeah.
issue as like a tertiary level. That's just weird. It's,
Yeah, but we can't restrict
yeah,
masks.
my issue is we can't identify him. We
I
can't.
agree.
So that's,
Right.
it's like, who is this
the
person?
police cruiser's
Right,
faster
so
than a
if his
horse.
horse would
Yeah.
hit
Right, yeah.
somebody and he rides away, we don't even know who he is.
Or what is he capable of? You never know. 'Cause
Yeah.
He has a mask, you don't know who he
Yeah.
is.
seemed like
Yeah, I'm for
Chief
the,
Shaw
I'm,
knew.
I
Yeah, I
agree
think,
with
I think
that.
the police have interacted with him and they know who.
they
he
knew
is.
who.
Yeah, you know who
Okay.
he is.
Yeah, so I
Okay.
think the police know who it is, because
All
we
right.
actually talked about, when he went through Ben Franklin, we talked about a no trespassing letter. If he had a weapon, I would have no problem saying,
Right.
hey, you can't wear a mask and a weapon on our campus and just come
Right.
go, please, like, you're not banned. But again, I don't wanna turn this into a Supreme Court case just because
True.
I'm stomping on somebody's right. So
I agree.
I think the policy is probably the best way to go. With your permission, what I can do is look up some of those best versions,
Mhm.
send them out to you,
Good.
the email you can look at,
Yeah.
pick the best parts you like. For the next policy personnel, we can put one together and get in place, not only for this, but what else, like, so I see this person on this horse and I'm a little bit, not even, so I try to one up them and come the other side,
I thought the
and,
same thing.
you know what I mean?
Bring an
Like,
elephant- Bring an elephant, huh?
I'm a little, yeah, exactly.
Two horses.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
going our
My
far
emotional
fetched.
support trauma.
But even people have those air horns at the games too. That sudden noise can set a horse off no matter how well trained they are.
For sure.
Oh my gosh, I'm just imagining that. That's a disaster.
It could happen.
Absolutely. And these are all the conversations that we had this week, but
We used to take, this is a good story. We used to take our horse to take Santa Claus down Morgantown, down High Street. So we had a horse in a sleigh. And so we're sitting there with the horse in the sleigh. And Santa Claus is going ho, 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 ho. And the damn bandstand starts up.
Oh,
And the horse goes up on his back feet.
Yeah.
And Santa Claus goes ho, ho, ho.
oh gosh.
Yeah.
Okay, that's your story for the night.
That's it. That's it.
yeah.
Oh.
Okay.
Okay, I'm
Well,
happy
that's-
we're doing something. I'm pretty worked up
Yeah, and I
about
think we
this.
do it right rather than and careful, but quickly.
Yeah.
So
Thank you.
anything,
We,
anything else, sir?
I think that's good. If anybody has anything else.
Now that.
Is everybody- no,
Chris is here.
the only one we
Sit down.
is here is Julia.
Was that a good shot?
Yeah, hopefully Julie will be here by 6:15.
Too bad she can't.
Oh,
stay,
sorry.
But
Yeah.
Just trying to find a picture of horse.
Oh, I send you here. Some people sent me some pictures.
Oh, yeah.
We can be off, Randy, if you want to
yeah,
shut
turn